Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Geek Warning from the Escape Collective. I'm James Huang, and once again joined here by Escape Collective Senior Technical Editor Dave Rome. Only this time, Dave, you are not sitting across from me in a hotel room. You're back in Sydney, Australia. How's your jet lag doing?
It's not too bad. It's not too bad. I actually, for once, managed to sleep slightly on a plane. So, it wasn't a good sleep, but it was something. So, hit the ground running and been busy writing many articles since.
Do you watch any fun movies?
Yes. I can't remember what they are, though, so they're clearly not so memorable.
No upgrade to first class?
Sadly not, but almost the next best thing, I had my own row.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Not bad at all. So you get to maybe that's why you were sleeping.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly why I was sleeping.
Well, we have an awesome show for you. As always, we've got a few things to talk about. It's been a little quiet on the tech news front here. However, we do have some pretty big news. Shimano has just announced new versions of mechanical GRX gravel and 105 road mechanical 12-speed group sets. We've got unfortunately, some more layoffs to announce at Wahoo. I'm not really sure what's going on there. Maybe just some reshuffling after their buyback. And Dave and I, as you regular listeners should know, we just got back from the handmade show in Portland, Oregon. We're going to go over a few of our favorites, and we also have a nice little interview with one of our favorite builders. So, let's go ahead and get into it, I think. Maybe just before we do that, however, just a quick reminder that this podcast is funded by our members, meaning that we have no sponsored episodes. You're not inundated with ads. We work for you, just to be clear. And if that's what you like hearing and seeing from us at Escape Collective, please consider becoming a member if you haven't already signed up. You do get access to all of our incredible content. Full members also get to jump into the comment section, which is quite civil, I have to say. You also get access to the members-only Discord channel, where our community talks about everything and everything. About anything and everything, I should say. So yeah, monthly subscriptions start at just $7 a month. We've got discounted annual options. You can head over to escapecollective.com/join for more info. All right, let's get into the news, shall we? First up, the big news, I think. Shimano dropped a couple of big things today, actually, by the time you're listening to this.
Mm-hmm.
First one I think we should go over probably is this new GRX group set, which we kind of had a little bit of a preview of when we got some nice photos from our friend Ben Delaney over at The Ride with Ben Delaney. He got some photos of that then unreleased group set at Unbound Gravel. Dave, you now have the official information, though. So what is this thing? And basically, did we get anything wrong in that preview article?
I'm not sure about the preview article, actually. I need to go back and check whether you got it wrong. I don't think so, but So Shimano sent me all the way to Bend, Oregon, of all places, to ride the new GRX, and the riding was cut in half due to bushfires, but still managed to get a few hours on the new stuff, so I have some early impressions. But yeah, basically what we're looking at is a new mechanical updated version of GRX RX 800 series, so it's now RX 820. And yeah, there's 3 different gearing options. So there's 1x with a 10 to 45 tooth cassette. There's a 1x with a 10 to 51 tooth cassette. And then there's the faithful old 2x system with the 48-31 tooth chainrings.
Moving to a 10-tooth sprocket, that does mean a switch to a microspline free hub body, though, doesn't it?
Sure does. So it's using at that level, it's using an XT cassette. It's even got the XT branding on the back of the cassette. And so if you're using their 1x, the new 12-speed 1x version of GRX, then you will need to update your free hub body to the microspline, which was a system introduced with 12-speed mountain bike. And it allows that 10-tooth cog to overhang the free hub body. There's some complication there. It seems like some wheel brands didn't know this was coming and currently don't offer microspline in a 142 millimeter width rear hub. But I don't think it'll take very long, because speaking to the hub brands that did know it was coming, it sounds like it's just a set of end caps to make that happen.
Well, that's good. I mean, hopefully at this point, most companies' hubs seem pretty interchangeable, so that shouldn't be too big of an issue. Hopefully, it's just like a SKU configuration thing.
Yeah.
As far as the components themselves go, my understanding is it's sort of a hybrid kind of between kind of like GRX and XT. Is that a good thing in this case? Like, are there any performance advantages? It seems to me like the biggest one here is addressing the maybe not super competitive gear range that Shimano had with existing 1x GRX. Is that correct?
Yeah, so they fixed the gear range in the 1x solution. So yeah, that up to 10 to 51 tooth cassette is a whole lot better than what was previously available. Like I still am on a gravel bike running previous generation GRX with an 11 to 46 tooth 11 speed cassette. And that officially was actually beyond the technical capacity of GRX. It worked perfectly. Some bike brands like BMC used to spec it, but it wasn't actually recommended by Shimano. So yeah, officially that the old GRX was 11 to 42 tooth cassette. So yeah, some big changes there, which is super positive. The other element is because they've upgraded to their 12-speed systems, which is sharing a chain across road and mountain bike. They've now introduced that Hyperglide Plus shifting ramp system, which really improves the way the shift happens under power, especially when moving down the cassette toward the outside of the bike. So to your harder gears, that's sort of where it's most advantageous.
Okay. First impressions?
Yeah, really good. I would say on the negative side, it does seem, as you'd expect with tighter gear spacing, it does seem more sensitive to adjustment, and certainly hanger alignment is going to be a bigger issue. So that's sort of my main concern with it. But beyond that, when you've got the cable tension dialed, yeah, I mean it shifts quicker and easier than 11 speed. The lever throw is less, like noticeably you need to push the lever noticeably less to get the shift to happen. And yeah, the under power, it is incredibly good. I have no hesitation, despite not spending a lot of time on it, I have no hesitation saying it's currently the best mechanical performance gravel group set on the market.
Interesting. I mean, that's not, I guess that shouldn't be a huge surprise considering we're talking about shifting and Shimano here.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, their competition is SRAM Apex, which is a entry-level group set, whereas, Shimano's version sits at like an Ultegra level in terms of pricing. And then, yeah, there's probably Campagnolo E-Car. I'm much preferring the way the Shimano shifts at this time, but more time to be spent.
Cool. All right. Well, you can head over to escapecollective.com for Dave's very, very detailed article on that. So if you got any questions, make sure you drop those in the comments on that article. And the other half of this Shimano launch that they have done today is, another product that was kind of inadvertently leaked, I think, back at Eurobike, now that I think about it. It's the new updated mechanical 105 road group set. I'm particularly excited about this one. This one looks really good. So what are the details here?
Yeah, so I guess most importantly, Shimano released 105 Di2 last year in 12 speed to match Ultegra and Durace, and there was no real word of mechanical. They were very silent on it, and we're sort of asking questions about, are you going to bring out a mechanical version? And it kind of almost sounded like they weren't. It sounded like it was going to be like Tiegra was going to be the best mechanical option. So this is really exciting that this has actually finally happened. And I guess for now, it looks like it'll be Shimano's best mechanical road group set. First and foremost, it's now hydraulic disc
best mechanical 12 speed, would you say?
Yes. So yes, 12 speed. It's using all the same running gear as 105 Di2. So the crank, the chain, the cassettes, the brake calipers, the brake hoses, the rotors, all the same. The only new things are the two derailleurs and the shifters, which pull cables or are pulled by cables. For me, the most telling thing, I guess, of where the market's at is Shimano have gone all in with hydraulic disc brakes. So there is no rim brake or mechanical brake option in these. There's only one set of levers that you can get. So that's going to be a key thing to know here. The other interesting thing is that there's only one rear derailleur. So you no longer have a choice of cage lengths. It's just The one reader error that's supplied is to shift with either the 11 to 34 or the 11 to 36 tooth cassette ranges offered in 105. So yeah, a bit more limiting there. And then likewise, there's only 2 crank options in 105. You've got a compact or a semi-compact to choose from. So more limited options, but it looks good. And I guess looking at the levers, I haven't put my hands on them yet, but the big change there is that they've shortened the reach. So especially good for those with shorter hands. And yeah, there's a more obvious scoop to the brake lever, which should make it easier to reach when you're in the drops.
Yeah, looking at the images of the stuff, I mean, it, like you said, it does look quite good. I think it's definitely not quite as like curvaceous as, I guess you could say, as like Ultegra and Dura-Ace, but like the crank in particular, is like a Dura-Ace clone almost.
Yeah.
And then I guess love it or hate it, it unfortunately only comes in an all black finish. With Shimano 105 being mostly aluminum, like it really, I don't know, seemed like it was kind of a prime opportunity to go with a more polished or kind of clear anodized something silver finish. But you know, I've campaigned for that before and have clearly lost. So
yeah, I think there's an element of the silver finish potentially adding cost. I think it's a harder finish to achieve.
100% harder to achieve.
Yeah. So I mean, Shimano has absolutely done 105 in silver before, and you didn't see it in the market nearly as much as you saw the black stuff. So, and you know, they've obviously gone with where the demand is. I too would love a silver group, but you know, being all aluminium, maybe this one can be polished up if you've got a spare few weeks.
Or decide to send a box of things over to Chris Howard at Cyclo Retro in Melbourne.
Exactly. So, yeah, I think it looks really good. I think in terms of weight, you're looking at about 3 kilograms for a whole group set, which is, from what I saw, it was less than 100 grams more than the 105 Di2 equivalent. Pricing is like $1,000 for a whole group set. Really not bad. But yeah, one of my favorite elements of this is that because it's using the same 12-speed system as all the Di2 options, there's nothing stopping you from upgrading. Say you bought a bike with this 105 mechanical. There's nothing stopping you from upgrading to like a new Ultegra crankset or an Ultegra cassette or a better chain, which would, you know, improve your shift performance, but obviously save a lot of the weight difference that you're seeing in between these group sets. And I guess one key thing to know is that Shimano 105 cassettes do not have Hyperglide Plus shifting ramps on them. So that only begins at Ultegra and Dura-Ace. And it was explained to me that that's because machining those shifting ramps into such a small, tightly spaced cassette is actually quite difficult and costly. So they just don't bother with 105. So yeah, there's some shifting performance gains to be had by upgrading to an Ultegra cassette.
Interesting. Well, I don't know how big of a deal that'll be. I mean, realistically, historically, Shimano's road shifting has been pretty awesome.
Yep.
I mean, Hyperglide Plus does make it tangibly better, but I mean, you're already kind of in splitting hairs there.
Yeah, I was recently, before going to the US, I was jumping between wheel sets, one with Hyperglide Plus, one without, with a 105 cassette. Not an obvious difference.
Pretty subtle.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dave, I know you did not get a chance to ride that stuff. Do we have any sense as to when Shimano might have the stuff out on the market?
Almost immediately is from what I was told, which is very different to what Shimano used to do, which was send out a press release and then release the product 6 to 9 months later.
Right.
So yeah, I was told that at least for Australia, they're expecting aftermarket parts as soon as October. And that OE supply, so supply on complete bikes, might even be before then.
Interesting. Do you have a test group set lined up?
Not of the 105. I'm hoping to find some bikes that have it. So we'll see.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, like your GRX setup, Dave, you do have a very detailed article up on escapecollective.com. So go ahead and head there for more info. And again, if you got any questions about 105, leave them in the comments and we'll address them as quickly as we can. Also, Dave, you have a bit of an interview, a little deep dive with one of the people from Shimano that you talked to when you were at the launch event. 2 of the people. Okay. But so that'll be like a little bit of a bonus deep dive Geek Warning episode. So stay tuned for that in the coming days. We'll have that up pretty soon. So stay tuned for that. All right. Enough with Shimano for now. Yeah, a little bit of not maybe not so great news to share. This is never a fun thing for us to cover. We are hearing about some more layoffs at Wahoo Fitness, which may be a little bit unexpected considering it kind of comes on the heels of what should have been pretty good news about the company being bought back by its founder. Dave, do we have any info as far as what happened and who unfortunately got let go?
Yeah, so it seems like Wahoo has closed its actually fairly new sports science division. They've just shut it down and everyone that's associated with that. And I think it's unfortunate, but I also think the writing might have been on the wall with this one, that they bought the company back and they would have really had to assess the areas of the company that are profitable and then the areas of the company that are a cost. And unfortunately, the side of the sports science side and dare I say some of the software side is probably the stuff that turned Wahoo into got them to the bad place that they were in. So this is bad news, but I don't know if it's all that surprising.
So Wahoo Fitness, the sports science division, was headquartered pretty close to my house, actually, here in Boulder, Colorado. A nice little facility that they had opened up really not too long ago, if I remember correctly. We have talked a lot in the past about watching companies who have kind of expanded beyond what seemed to be their core competencies, and usually with not fantastic results. Particularly for smaller companies that maybe don't have a whole lot of cash reserves, as Wahoo apparently didn't really seem to. It's for sure absolutely never, ever good news to hear that someone's lost their job. I think it's a subject pretty near and dear to our hearts over here.
It's a familiar topic.
But it does. Yeah, Dave, I think I would agree that it does seem like the sort of thing where if Wahoo is going to be kind of more of a lean and mean company again, if they're going to kind of get back to what they were really, really good at, which in that case was kind of GPS computers and indoor trainers and that sort of thing, I guess it does make sense to kind of pull back a little bit and just kind of think more about their core business.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, thoughts go out to everyone that was involved in this next series of layoffs, and hope you all land on your feet.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I know personally at least one of the people who would have been affected by this. So anyway, moving on to news that's a little bit more fun. If you listened to the last episode, you'll know that Dave and I were just at the Handmade Bicycle Show. It's a new handmade show that took place in Portland, Oregon. Dave, what were your impressions of the show? Because mine were pretty positive. I mean, having attended an awful lot of NABS events, the North American Handmade Bicycle Show, this one kind of felt like, I would say, kind of like old school NABS shows. Like it was a little gritty, a little dirty. It was like kind of open air outdoors,
very
sort of
gritty.
thing, but but it was also like kind of like core in the sense that you had a whole bunch of really cool builders. You had new builders, old builders. You had a pretty wide range of stuff, and there was just a really good vibe. What were your impressions?
Yeah, it certainly felt fitting for Portland to have it in an old shipbuilding yard that hadn't been cleaned since Second War, by the looks of it.
I'm sure there was no lead dust in the flooring.
No. I was blown away. It was a huge show, amazing vibes, really good foot traffic. I mean, it was just kind of sensory overload was a term being thrown around a lot because it's every builder there was sort of sandwiched against the next builder, and as you walk these aisles, there's more than 100. Well, how many were there? I think there might have been as many as 200 exhibitors.
I think there were a couple hundred.
Yeah. And it's just like, they're all kind of sandwiched in, all sort of like, on top of each other. And it's very easy to just walk 2 to 3 meters and then blow past a builder who's doing something absolutely incredible. Really was. Yeah. I was there for 4 days and I still didn't see everything.
Oh, no. I mean, I was only there for just shy of 3 days, and I easily could have used another 2.
Yeah.
One of those days was media only too. So in theory, I guess 1.5 of those days were media only. So we, in theory, should have been pretty quick about blowing through a bunch of stuff. But as you said, there was just an awful lot to see and pay attention to and talk to people about.
Yeah.
I don't know what the ticket sales looked like. I certainly saw a pretty steady stream of people coming in when the doors opened up to the public. So I hope things went pretty well. But yeah, I mean, it certainly seemed to me like, I don't know, kind of felt like it could have used another day. I certainly could have used another day.
Yeah, that said, I mean, fatigue suddenly sets in around there. There was a lot of walking. The floor
Literally fatigue, yeah.
Yes, the floor was very hard. A lot of the builders, they had an extra day to set up as well and to pack up. So, I mean, it's being 4-day show, it's actually an entire week for the builders.
True,
so,
very true.
I think it's definitely long enough. And yeah, but it keeps you wanting a little bit more. But there's certainly a lot of fresh faces in the building scene that were there that I apologize for not getting the time to talk to. I tried to give myself the mission of talking to a handful of people that I had no idea what they did and who they were. And that's some of the stuff that we have in our galleries. But yeah, certainly there were many, many more.
Oh yeah, there were absolutely a whole bunch that I didn't have a chance to talk to that I wanted to check out. So we'll have to reserve those for another year, unfortunately. Dave, you got any? We've covered a whole bunch at this point. I think by the time this podcast goes live, we'll have had, I think, probably 6 galleries go up. So we've got quite a lot of images that are up on escapecollective.com, but from the Made Show. You got any favorites that you want to shout out to?
Yeah, there was quite a few. But I mean, top of my mind is the number 22 Drifter Adventure gravel bike. I mean, that thing is
bonkers.
Is so cool. So yeah, number 22, they're titanium specialists. It's actually the old Sirota team are building a lot of these. And yeah, they're always incredible. They're always like rolling art. But this Drifter Adventure bike, it's their latest gravel bike. It's got clearance for 50mm tires. It's a one buy only bike. It's now running their own 3D titanium printed dropout for UDH compatibility. So the one I photographed had SRAM transmission set up on it. But then you start looking at the finer details of this bike. So they're now making their own headset. They were making their own headset for their internal cabled bikes. This is not an internal cable bike. So they've made their own titanium headset top cap and a headset assembly and spacers and stem and top cap for that. So it all matches perfectly with the frame. And then you running your fingers along the top tube and you spot that it's actually a coupled bike with the company's own secret couplers and using its own brake hose coupler inside of that. So it's just a fantastic looking bike, and the more time you spend with it, the more you realize how many features they've packed into it.
And to be clear, those couplers are not standard. You can definitely get your frame coupled.
Yeah.
But that's not how number 22 is just building all those drifters.
No. Good note. But yeah.
So I mean, I've watched I've watched that company develop its products over the years, and it is pretty incredible to see how much they have progressed, particularly in their finish work.
Yep.
Their anodizing work is, I would say, it's probably second to none at this point. It is absolutely bonkers, and it is the sort of thing that really, as much as we try to put it into photographs, like you just have to see it in person. It's insane.
Yeah, but yeah, that the matching headset and top cap and spacers, I think, is something that not many builders are doing. I can't think of too many others that are doing that. And it just completes the look of the bike. Like, I think that's the next thing that we're going to see other builders, they're going to need to do, because it just looks so much better than having like a stack of black spacers on the bike.
Totally.
So for me, that was awesome. And they also won, there were no awards, but they still won Booth of the Show. So they had corrugated, sort of accordion style recycled paper as their,
it's like a paper
booth.
lantern almost sort of thing.
So yeah,
or like, those little things that you can get at like carnivals and stuff like that. It's like two little wooden sticks and then paper, like folded paper in between, and then you sort of like unwind it the other way, and it kind of looks like a lollipop.
Yeah,
it's like that.
Their entire booth was paper.
So cool, very, very compact.
Mm-hmm. Bryce shared with me, I guess it was like a architectural layout drawing for their booth, where he had like the planned radius for like the way it's the paper would swoop through. And he told me that it was like modular, so you could move the booth around based on the light available. They're on another level.
One of my favorites came from probably a lesser known builder to a lot of people. She's based in Squamish, British Columbia. Her name is Danielle Schoen. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I always mess up the umlaut thing. But her company is called Schoen Studio, and she made a custom gravel cargo bike. It was not a gravel e-cargo bike. It was just a gravel cargo bike, a custom build, fully custom for a husband and wife pair who wanted to go bike packing with their dog, interestingly enough. And it was a pretty huge height disparity. Like apparently the husband's 6'2" and the wife was 5'2". So the bike had to fit both, had some very interesting requirements, had to be off-road friendly, had to have a capacity for a dog. I forgot to ask how big the dog was, but seemingly the dog was not very small. But the detail work on this thing was amazing. I mean, Danielle had said that this was really her first cargo bike, so it was kind of a little bit of a joint experiment. So the customer apparently was very aware that this was going to be sort of they were going to be somewhat of a guinea pig, so to speak, as far as testing out some stuff, which is fine. But the detail work on that bike was just bonkers. It was just so cool. Just the frame layout, the paint work, the geometry was meant to be kind of on the sportier side, which seemed kind of fun. I love that it was a gravel cargo bike. It had knobby schwabby tires front and rear. Had a power meter on it. It was pretty cool. It was a 1x kind of mullet drivetrain sort of setup. It was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and like that sort of thing doesn't necessarily apply to the to what I do with cargo bikes, but that sort of specific request, I feel like very much embodies the kind of thing that you really only see at handmade bike shows like that, custom shows, because like there's just no way in hell you're finding that off the shelf anywhere.
Yeah,
and I love that someone can have that sort of idea in mind and find someone to do it. And it did go to a local customer. So it was made in Squamish and it was going to a customer in Squamish, which was awfully cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. There were actually a couple more female builders in the show. There might be even more than that. I spoke
There were a whole bunch.
Yeah, I spoke to two more and their bikes are absolutely incredible. They both come with like really illustrious careers in fabricating frames for other brands. And in Australia, I don't think we have a single female builder in the scene. It's just cool to see. Yeah.
Well, Paragon Machine Works, they're kind of like a small parts supplier to a lot of builders. They do like dropouts, head tubes, stuff like that. They actually had a really super cool story that they posted on their Instagram account. And it was just portrait after portrait of all of the women builders that they work with, either the builder or like they're running the company or somehow involved with the company. And it was just image after image after image of all of these women who were at the show. And again, this sort of thing where I wish we had more time to talk to more builders in general and just get more stories, because there's so much we could dig into there. Yeah. So we'll have to
one to follow up. I mean, the two I've still got to cover in upcoming galleries. There was Ashley of Significant Other Bikes.
I wanted to talk to her.
So
those bikes look awesome.
She's a fabricator in Colorado, working with what's the group? Is it Merlin? What's the parent company to Merlin?
Janus.
Is that what it is?
I think it's what you're talking about. I think.
Oh, okay. That's a day job, but and then she's got Significant Other Bikes, which she had this really cool fixie on display with a lot of like 3D printed pieces into it as well. Which very interesting. Favorite piece was she had speed holes in the seat tube for a D-lock to run through, just because you can. And then the other one was B Vivet, who used to actually teach at the UBI frame building school, and she runs hot salad bicycles, which is quite fun. And she had a bike on display that I believe was being made for our old colleague Anna Marie Rook.
I was just going to say, she did just have a bike made by them.
Yes. So I actually photographed that, and that was, Anyway, you'll need to see it to believe it in the galleries, but it's got this most ridiculous anno/powder coat fade on it. Cool.
Well, I'm just going to do one more of my favorites. I've mentioned before that there is that new Canadian brand Framework that I actually just had a frame show up a little bit ago. So I'm not going to go into too much detail with them just because we've talked about them quite a bit and I'm about to share an awful lot more information about. But another bike that really caught my eye was that Mosaic road bike that you actually just featured in your recent gallery.
Yep.
And the bike itself, I feel like wasn't like it wasn't like crazy groundbreaking or anything. It was fairly straightforward. But the finish work on it was absolutely stunning. Like it had this pearlescent white base coat with this kind of multicolor graphic thing. I don't even know how to describe it. It's part of the Mosaic's Artist series, I think is what they're calling it. But just absolutely stunning. Like every time I walked by, I just couldn't help but stare at it. It was just beautiful. And yes, I understand that white bikes are harder to keep clean, but this one was at least glossy. So, I feel like if you were at least kind of careful and not letting grease stick on it or not letting stuff get stained, I feel like that could look just like that for a very, very long time. I feel like the difficulty of keeping that thing clean should not be a deterrent to having a bike that beautiful.
Is that a message for someone in particular, James?
No,
it feels
not
like a
anyone
very
in particular.
pointed message.
Is okay, fine. It may be a slightly pointed message. Kristen Legan, who does some PR work for Mosaic, she had mentioned to me that her significant other, actually, who's Nick Legan, I think he's the brand manager at Shimano, I think is his official title. Yep. Apparently he had told her that he disapproved of having a white bicycle like that because in his experience as a professional mechanic, those bikes were just nearly impossible to keep clean. But my argument was, it's not a matte finish; it's a glossy finish. How hard could it be?
Yeah.
So pretty. Kristen, get one. Just get one.
That paint. Yeah, the paint of the show.
Unbelievable. Anyway, I mean, we could go and sit down and go over our favorites all day. But again, you should head over to escapecollective.com and check out all the galleries that we have. Beautiful full-size images. So hopefully you're looking at all that stuff on a giant screen. But one thing that was really cool, and I unfortunately was not part of this conversation because I had to leave a little bit early, but Dave, you were able to sit down with one of our favorite builders in the custom world, Rob English, who also has done some columns for us at Escape Collective.
Yes.
I don't want to give away too much of the conversation, but you recorded a nice little interview with him. So I think we should go ahead and toss over to that because Rob and you covered quite a bit of ground there, and Rob had some interesting things to say. So let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
Let's do it. All right, I'm with Rob English of English Cycles. Rob, where are we?
We are sat in the back of a giant old barge shed in Portland under a bridge at the Made Handbuilt Show, the first edition of the new Handbuilt Bike Show.
Okay, we're on the final day. It's 4 days. There was 3 public days. This is the third of the public days, but there was also a sneaky little media-only day as well, an industry day to kick things off earlier in the week. So how are you feeling?
Tired. 4 days is a long show to be standing on concrete, but it's been really good. It's been 4 years since the last NABS, and nice to be back in the space with the community and it's been really good to interact with some of the other builders. So yeah, happy.
A few familiar faces, a few new faces, I assume.
There's so many new builders this time around, it seems like, and it's been really nice. There's been quite a few people I've corresponded with. I'm now able to put faces to names, which has been great, including yourself. Yes,
we finally meet.
Yeah, right.
Yes. Rob, you've got a few bikes on display. What did you bring with you?
So kind of low key the show this time because it was just like kind of rock up to my local event, but a little project bike which was an homage to my teenage years growing up as a mountain biker in the UK, and I was always inspired by a company called Pace who made aluminium bikes out of square tubing and butted the tubing by milling the sides of the tubes. and I managed to find a new old stock Pace fork crown on eBay. And so kind of built the whole bike around that as an homage to them. So kind of in steel, because that's what I build in, but did the same thing with square tubing, but with modern geometry, modern parts. And yeah, I've been copying their stuff for years. I mean, they did the one-piece stem steerer that I've been doing for 20 years.
Interesting.
And so it's nice to kind of give an actual nod to where that originally came from.
Do you have any connection or any contact with some of the original founders?
I don't. I've got a buddy back home who rides with one of them.
Okay.
But otherwise, no. So
yeah. For those that don't know it, can you tell us a bit about your history? I mean, you moved around the world a bit, so you're English cycles. I mean, your surname is English, but you have an English background as well.
So I grew up in England. And built my first bike there in high school at 15. Then went off and studied mechanical engineering at Cambridge. And I was just trying to find my way into the bike industry in some way. And I worked for a startup company in Massachusetts for a year. And that sadly folded. And then I call it my bike bum years, where I just spent the summers in England racing and then went south every winter. So I missed winter for 4 years, which is pretty great. But during that time, I was talking with various people and ended up Bike Friday, who make folding bikes here in Oregon, got me a visa to come be their engineer. Okay. So that brought me over here. And
who are actually here at the show.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And very nicely, they have an open shop policy. So once the day job was done, I had full access to a bike factory, so I could start playing around with my own ideas.
Wow. Okay.
So my first few frames were built there, and then I gradually started building out my own shop, and eventually got to the point where it's time to go full time with it.
Yeah, right. Okay. How long ago was that?
2009, I started the business. About 3 years later, I went full time.
Full time.
Yeah.
Full time ever since.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had the Pace homage to the Pace bike, which James Huang actually covered on escapecollective.com if you want to see some photos of it. Very cool bike. I'm intrigued to hear how it rides once you get
me
that
too.
opportunity.
It's very interesting that I can do some rough calculations on what the torsional properties of the square tubing will be, but what does that actually translate to? We'll find out. Yeah.
Yes, it's definitely not a common shape in amongst the halls here. Like it's So the other bikes, what else have you got on display?
So then I brought kind of my take on the modern road bike, which for better or worse has the fully integrated hoses with the NV system up front, and then just a real minimalist, what it needs to be and nothing more road bike. Clears 32mm tires, got hidden fender mounts just in case, and just the fun thing on it was that I've become a big fan of having a frame bag on my bikes. Like riding without stuff in your back pockets is really nice. And so I worked with my bag maker on this one to prototype bag with magnets in it. So the bike doesn't need any bosses and there's no straps. So hopefully that's going to work out well.
Nice. Have you used that yet?
No, I've got one customer testing the first prototype.
Okay.
He said it's working great.
Yeah.
And this one actually has stronger magnets than that one. So.
And the magnets are profiled to match the tube shape, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Very clever. Not something you could probably do with a carbon frame, or so easily do with a carbon frame or any other material. But
ferrous materials for the wind on that one. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, I'm keen to hear. You've been talking about your bikes for 3 days now, going on to the fourth. Is there a most commonly asked question that you're sort of getting sick of answering?
Well, obviously the Pace bike is like, I think the whole weekend there's been 7 people who've actually walked up and gone, "Oh, it's a Pace." It's like great.
And the other hundreds?
Yeah, I have to explain.
Okay.
And then the other question is always about my seat stays. So I just have to.
So you're known. I guess your signature on some of your bikes is the wishbone, very very skinny, very narrow diameter seat stays that end in a wishbone stay. yeah, I mean, that's actually something you wrote about for us on Escape Collective in the past, in your column, the why of bike tech. Is that why, the whys of bike tech?
Yeah, I think that's what we we called it something like that.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So what's the idea there? And you've obviously been doing it a very long time. So
Yeah,
it works.
so I think because I came into building like more regular bikes from a background of doing folding bikes and recumbents and other stuff where you just kind of start from first principles. So I wasn't constrained by how things have always been done. So from an engineering standpoint, I was looking at the structure and once the chainstays are triangulated across the rear axle, particularly with steel, that's a very rigid structure. So that provides all the lateral stiffness at the back of the bike. And the seat stays are just a prop. So that structure is only loaded in compression. And steel tube is so strong in compression that even what I'm using is really still overbuilt for most applications.
Yeah, okay.
And it's being 14 years in with this now, it's like okay, yeah, it's fine. Like
It's pretty proven at this point.
Right.
Is it even possible to go skinnier?
Oh yeah, I'm
It
like
is? Yeah.
most of the time I build with 3/8, so 9.5 millimeter seat stays. For smaller riders, and actually on some of my personal bikes, I've gone down to 5/16, which is 8 millimeter.
Okay.
And like I haven't quite tried going down to 1/4 inch yet. It's like, but I might try it at some point. Just see what I learn.
Maybe for next year's Made show.
Possibly.
Yeah.
All
right. So, have you had a chance to walk around much, see what others are up to?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, there's so many people doing great work here.
Yeah.
It's and particularly some of the new people who I haven't seen before. So Chris at Flux, I think they're out of Colorado, but
yeah, Denver.
Moved from painting bikes to building bikes.
Yes.
And he's doing some really beautiful work with titanium and carbon.
Yeah. He's almost done it in reverse, eh? Like a lot of frame builders perfect the craft of fabrication and then learn how to bring paint in house. He's done the paint in house, kind of set that up as a business, and now he wants to build the frames to go underneath it. So,
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. He's actually doing some interesting things. He's also trying to be full service to the point that he's stitching his own bags.
Right. And did he tell you he sewed those bags in the hotel room last night? It was like,
and they look great.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just too much talent.
Yeah.
Okay, it's like,
So, well, that's one. Like that was one I had in my gallery. It's absolutely stunning paint. But I mean, underneath that, there's some pretty interesting frame design with like carbon mixed with titanium and
how he did the fenders on the bike and things. Just some thoughtful touches.
Yes.
And then I was talking with Tyler at Bitchin. He's been. I have so many people ask me, "Oh, can you build me a steel one-piece drop handlebar stem?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, I'd love to, but I can't. I can't. Thin-walled steel just can't be bent in that radius." But titanium, because you run a thicker wall and it's not quite as strong, you can. And so up to now, they've been like Black Sheep doing drop bars. Tyler's taken a different approach. He's actually 3D printed a piece for the corner where the tops go into the drops. And I'm really impressed. It looks like a really nice solution to get a full custom bar. It gives that really nice shelf to kind of rest your palm on the bar. So
it's not like this tight radius bend of the tube. It's got like a proper a lot of surface area to that corner. And he's not having to probably do the hardest bend of a handlebar in titanium. He's keeping that to another method of construction. So
exactly
that was very clever. I mean, they're certainly a premium bar, as you'd expect for a handmade titanium handlebar with 3D printing in it. But that was cool. And he's like doing so I believe the hooks are always a standard shape, so it's a consistent radius for the hook of the drop. But he can vary the flare and whatever width you want to do. So it's like a full custom bar. And
he's probably going to do one where he welds the stem into it too. So
cool. Okay.
So I mean, like my customers already want that. I'm like, we can actually get that now if you want to have it all matching.
One of my favorite parts of that is he's come up with, so because the radius of the drop is the same, it's like a pretty traditional, round smooth radius shape. If someone wants an ergo shaped handlebar, he's actually 3D printed, just plastic print inserts that go into the drop to give you that ergo shape. So you can just move it wherever you want on the drop, and then just like electrical tape it in place, tape over it. You never know it's there, but that gives you the different shape.
Someone did that years ago, right?
I think it's definitely been done. But yeah, I mean, to use
it works.
to use 3D printing in that application, I mean, it just makes perfect sense. The other thing that obviously being titanium, being a nice wide handlebar, is it's going to be very comfortable. So I can see why you're looking at that as a pretty interesting product.
Yeah, and it's just, and I think he's going to do some actual fatigue testing on it and stuff to make sure it's all going to work as planned. And so yeah, it's just like it's actually really interesting how many of the people who are new builders are already using 3D printing. Mm-hmm. It's becoming a lot more accessible, it seems like. Which is kind of cool, because it's like everyone's got good CAD skills at that point too, which is like, okay, everyone's moving up. So.
Yeah, like I know like Newhouse have helped quite a few other builders in the room with some 3D printing skills and knowledge, and access to that sort of like parametric designs and all sorts of new things coming to the builders world. So there are certainly a few bikes in under this big roof that I guess have shared talent involved.
Yeah, and then on the flip side of that, it's nice to see like Frameworks really pushing the subtractive manufacturing.
Yes,
with the machining of the pieces he's making. His crank assembly is really interesting.
Tell me about it.
So it's a tri-lobe connection between the spindle and the crank, which is like E13 have been using that for years. I've used it on some hub designs and stuff, but his is a split collet, so the tri-lobe expands into the crank arm. So it's just, haven't seen that before. And it's interesting. So again, I think it's something new that still needs some testing, but it's interesting to see people bring in new ideas.
Perhaps what interests me most about that design is because he's controlling the bottom bracket shell, and he's controlling the bearing tolerances, he's controlling the crank spindle, he's making it all. He's decided to forego having like bearing preload adjustment on the crank, so it's literally just like a tolerance fit, the whole thing, which is pretty. I don't know if it's confident, is what I'll say. There's a lot of confidence in holding the right tolerances to make that happen.
When you're making every piece yourself, then I mean you can. It's funny, Dave. I'm just rereading a book on the history of precision and how we've got to where we are.
I've heard about this book. I need to pick this up.
Each chapter goes to the next decimal point of like how stuff fits together, and it's like it's.
It sounds like a good read. It's just called Precision, is it? Something.
I have to check. It's Simon Winchester, I think, is the author.
All right. There you go.
So, so just like all these people bring in different, and the Jonathan at Frameworks is built himself a robot to wind his own tubes as well. It's just like, okay, dude, just like, it's just so impressive the skills people are bringing.
Yeah, he first started teasing that on Instagram. The robot, like, I think it was like picking up a candy bar and moving it or something like that. And he's now got it basically sanding his tubes as well, like post cure, like it just to get like a consistent finish that he doesn't have to do himself. It's just running like an orbital sander across the tube at a consistent rate.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's like people, like anything, once you get a tool and then actually think about how to use it, it's like it's really I love the creativity in this room. It's people doing all kinds of stuff.
Yes. So James actually has one of those bikes inbound to check out and test out.
That'd be
one of the
interesting.
Frameworks bikes. So if anyone that hasn't come across this yet, it's pretty new. They're not really. I don't believe they've taken any customer orders yet.
I think John said he's maybe got 5 or 6 under friends right now.
Okay, but so it's in-house filament wound carbon fiber, but the lugs. His background is contract manufacturing for like machining for very high tolerance demands, and he's kind of bringing that to the bike world with in-house machined lugs as well. So it's an interesting project.
It is, yeah. When I was talking to him yesterday, it's just like, there's no right answer to the problem of building a bicycle, and I think that's fantastic. It's just like
And that's
it's probably pretty evident in this room, right? There's
Right.
like the number of different approaches that you see. Like even when you're talking about the same material, just the way people are using that material is so variable. It's quite cool to go from one booth to the next and just see the completely different approach to making a bike.
It is, yeah. There's there's so much creativity here. It's really fun. And I have to always remember to like look beyond the paint because there's so much fantastic paintwork too. It's like, oh, look at the pretty things.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, we mentioned Flux Customs before. For me, like the paint's almost too nice because you go to him and it's like, Flux Customs started as a paint shop, and you just get distracted by the paint. You're like, oh, this is the greatest paint. I can see why you got this on display. And he's like, oh, I actually made the frame underneath it. So like, some of the paint's perhaps too nice, and that it detracts from the bikes. But anyway, it's the package that counts. So it's anything else that you've seen that sort of inspires maybe on the parts and accessory side?
a good question.
What about your neighbor?
Oh yeah. So Remco Tools next to me. So it's actually a guy I know who used to live in Eugene.
Okay.
And so they both worked for a company that made automatically adjusting desks. And they're thinking that technology could be really useful for a work stand. And so they've actually done it. And I'm like, that looks amazing. And I was thinking it was going to be a unaffordable kind of deal, but it's actually really well priced. And I will be taking one home with me.
Yes,
So
it's like $550-ish. That doesn't come with a clamp. He's working on a clamp at the moment, which in itself looks really good. I think the base is extra as well, but
yeah, you can use just a standard park square base. So like a lot
Or
of
you
shops
can-
will have that
or
already.
you can bolt it directly to your floor if you have that ability to do that. For that price, and I think that includes domestic shipping too, which is quite amazing. But yeah, like he's, dare I say, at least a quarter of the price, if not less than all of his competing products.
Like the park one is 2,000 or at least, right? So, and this seems like a better form factor. It's because it telescopes down onto itself. It's really neat, and it's got preset heights. You can program it, and it will lift 100 pounds. So, roll your e-bike in, clamp it, and then lift it up. So.
Yeah. So I mean, for me at that price, if you're a consumer that has a nice e-bike at home, or like maybe a cargo bike or something like that, this makes a lot of sense and is actually not unaffordable.
Yeah.
And then for a shop that's been unable to justify the cost of an e-bike and have just been hoping that occupational health and safety don't come by and watch them lifting up cargo bikes,
or have their employees out for a week because they tweak their backs.
I mean, this to me is like a no-brainer, even if it's just an additional stand in the shop. So I suspect if all goes to plan with his production and everything, I mean, I see this being a very popular selling product.
I do too, and I'm going to try it out for brazing because I always have to be able to, because if I want to, when I'm brazing, if I want to raise the bike, I have to like kind of stop, flip the hood up, open the quick release, lift the whole thing, look it back down, and then resume. So most of the time I end up like squatting on the floor to get to the point. So to be able to just like press the button and have it.
I wonder if he can make you like a foot pedal.
We talked about it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because then I was thinking about, can I add a servo for rotation as well and have 2 foot pedals so I can actually just have it move underneath me while I'm brazing. Like,
what was the answer to that?
Like conceptually, it's possible. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I might have to do that bit myself.
Okay. That sounds like a very niche application, but very interesting. So
I think there's welding fixtures that rotate so you can do the welding.
Absolutely.
The thing with brazing, you're always repositioning because gravity is a big part of how you build the fillet. And to be able to just have a button and have it slowly rotate.
It makes perfect sense. Yeah. Keep us up to date on how you go with that if you get that thing moving.
Yeah.
So
definitely just in terms of testing their products in the shop, I'll report back. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Deal. Yeah. Me. That's probably one, given the weight of it, that I might not see in my workshop for a little while yet. But Doesn't fit in my suitcase.
We were joking yesterday. So one of the two founders is from Belgium, and the Remco name is more to do with the two founders' names. But we're like, how can we relate this to Remco Evenepoel? It was like. They were looking up how tall he was yesterday, see if the stand happened to come to that height.
I think it goes higher than him, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not super tall, but that's a product I'm really excited about. And of all the products in the room, I mean, it's not the most game changing by any means, but it's probably one of the most one of the products that you think could be the most commercially viable at a large scale, at that price point. So.
Did you find any other tools here that jumped out at you?
Nothing too major. I mean, Abbey Bike Tools is here. The only new thing they're showing is a star nut setter, which is not revolutionary. It doesn't really do anything that other star nut setters don't already do. Theirs is green, a little nicer tolerance, so you're less likely to botch the job. It's a nice tool. It's made to Abbey quality, so all good there. At their booth, though, they do have the original Campagnolo service kit, but just the box of it, the wooden box, and then they've put their own tools in a foam inlay within it, which some would say is sacrilege, but it's quite cool. So
it's kind of fun. I did see this morning at the Wheel Fanatic have a new spoke thread roller.
Oh, okay.
Which looks interesting. Might have to talk to them about that.
Okay, all right. I'll have to go by.
That's always that thing. Is like the really good spoke rollers are super expensive, and someone like me, I build some wheels were not enough to justify.
Yes,
but when you don't have the right leg spokes, it's so annoying. It's like
it puts up a proper delay on things, doesn't it? So all right, I'll have to go over there as well. Maybe we can go over there together.
Yeah.
All right. We've mentioned quite a few things in the room. Are there any new faces? We mentioned Frameworks. That's a new face. Flux Customs. Are there any other new faces that you think people should be watching?
So there's a guy a couple of guys actually that I've been talking to. So Will at Albatross.
Yep. I was hoping you'd mention him.
Yeah. It's been he actually helped me out with some UDH dropouts for the show bikes.
Okay.
But so guy's been in the industry for a while, and now setting out his own thing, and he's just doing some different stuff. So he's trying to do some passive suspension with doing different seat stay designs, and then he's created a modular full suspension bike, which is kind of intriguing. It's like.
Yeah, the Apogee is what he's calling it, still in prototype form. But yeah, I mean, as you said, he comes from the industry. He's worked for brands like Bell and Praxis and Ibis as an engineer. Engineer or designer?
I forget.
Yeah, either way, he's hands-on with the creation of a lot of these products. And this full suspension bike, I mean, the goal is to basically have a fully self-contained suspension unit where all the moving components are effectively in this little box that you can bolt in and out of the front triangle and connect a different rear triangle to. So you can mix and match front and rear triangles and then change whatever the suspension characteristics are that you're after. So you could change out the box for an air shock or for a coil shock, or change the kinematics of the suspension, all without changing the geometry of the frame. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's interesting. And in terms of being able to then easily offer custom geometry on a full suspension bike, because you've just got this subframe assembly, and the difficult bit around the bottom bracket area is all done because it's the machine pieces. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that project progresses.
Yeah, he's got some he's not the only talented individual on that project. Colin Houston is also involved, and Colin's comes from a design for manufacturing background. So he did some design for manufacturing with Apple when they were doing some stainless steel products, and then he went on to Google's hardware division. And nowadays he runs his own machine shop in Tahoe, Lake Tahoe, which is not known as a manufacturing hub. I think he might be the only machine shop in town, but he does contract work for some pretty impressive stuff. Makes some military grade drones, I think he might have been telling me.
Interesting.
But yeah, I don't know if that was for public, but but yeah, he's basically doing the aluminium suspension system. Like he's the one manufacturing that. So it looks nice, and you can bet the tolerances on that are pretty solid. So
yeah, and definitely in terms of having all the pivots and stuff be machine pieces, as opposed to trying to braze them when stuff can move and it's harder to keep everything where it needs to be.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
Yeah, really. But just overall, really clever approach to a custom full suspension frame, and really scalable as well. So, another one to watch, and another one we've covered on Escape Collective. So it's in Gallery 2.
Another trend I've noticed is there's a few people who are kind of reframing their business, kind of moving from full custom to doing like more stock frames,
like semi-production frames, kind of like small batch, stock sizes.
And that's interesting because it's a different business model, and some of those people are pairing up. I guess it's kind of along the breadwinner model in some ways. But Chris McGovern, who's been building custom carbon bikes for years, is starting to start a new brand called Seeker, doing steel and titanium stock sizes.
Yep.
And so it's just really fascinating to see what direction people are going and what they think people want. And
I mean, I guess part of that is to bring the price down and reduce the lead time on your frame, so there's not really a waiting list, so you make your brand more accessible. But I mean, the other side of it is that you have economies of scale as a maker at that point, right? Like you're able to set up your fixtures and pump out 10 frames.
Possibly. Batching to me is kind of an ugly word, because I've got training and practice in lean production and Toyota production methods, and that's all about one piece flow, and you don't batch. It's just like batching is an ugly word in that context, because if it's more efficient, it's like you have to ask, why is it more efficient? And if it's because of setup times, then that's the constraint. I mean, the classic thing with Toyota was car manufacturers used to have to make runs of cars for weeks and weeks and weeks, because it would take them 24 hours to change the dies for the tooling. And Toyota said, okay, our customers don't want the same car all the time. We need to be able to do this quicker. And so through the continuous improvement, they went over a long period of time, they went from 24 hours to 1 minute to change the dies, which means that the cars can go through the line in any order they want. So they actually build what's wanted, not building into a pile of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think the humanity tendency is to think that batching is more efficient.
Okay.
But it isn't necessarily, because if you're building into a pile, that is an efficiency. If you're building what the customer wants right then, then that's
I've seen a few that they're kind of running it with the pre-order mindset, where they get they might get 5 orders for the one size, and then that's when they make them.
Sure.
So I mean, there's efficiency in that, but you're right. If you're building for stock, then that raises other risks as a business as well. Yeah.
So it's different business models, different approaches, and I hope everyone finds the success with what they're doing.
Yeah, and there's also taking that a step further. There's a few in this room, and as well, not in this room, like 51 out of Ireland did this as well. A custom carbon brand out of Ireland, but Scar Bikes as well has done this, where they're taking their brand name and they're taking their design philosophy and their ideas on geometry and tubing, and they're moving to Taiwanese or just Asian manufacturing to make their products much more accessible in price.
And it's interesting, right, that some people will carry their brand name through to the stuff they're not actually making, and other people pick a new name.
Yes.
So Adam Sklar has decided to keep naming them Sklars, even though he's not building them. And I guess Parley did the same, right, when they started doing overseas. And then some other people set up a second brand to have a differentiation.
Yeah.
And again, it's like
it's not something you've ever considered.
I was in a long discussion with a couple of friends about having some local TIG welded frames made to my design and some sort of stock sizing, and just after I thought about it a long time, I was like, what it's going to do for me is going to shift the balance of my shop time to my computer time, for want of a better word.
Yeah.
And I kind of like the balance where it is.
Yeah.
And so I didn't seem to be a compelling reason to do it at that time.
Okay.
Because I kind of like my balance of life work at the moment, and I get to ride when I want to ride and enjoy my
You're
time
certainly
working,
known
so.
in the room as someone that perhaps tinkers more than a lot of others on ideas and forever trying new things. I mean, that square tube mountain bike is a perfect example, but it's how many bikes are you building in a year? Like what's
I
your
typically
sort of
end up
workflow?
building about 30.
Okay.
So
right.
I schedule 2 a month, and then always try to under-promise and over-deliver, and that gives me a bit of buffer. And because I'm a one-man shop, it means I don't get under too much pressure because other stuff happens in life. I mean, I had to, with the fires and the heat we had, I was basically didn't work for 2 weeks, and that's fine. So it doesn't. I can just pick it back up. And,
Life continues. Yeah.
So.
Is there a trend that you're seeing, at least from what you're building, as to where the demand is and what style of bike people are most after?
The most I've been building, I think, the last year or so has been kind of that all-road kind of bike, really. So it's people who are riding mostly on the road, and so want road geometry but want clearance for the bigger tires.
Okay. How big?
Kind of 35, 38
Okay.
kind of range seems to be the most common. From my experience, that's why I end up riding probably 90% of the time, even though I'm on the road. Most of the time, I'm the bigger tires. It's just like, where's that trail go? Oh, I'll just go see it. It's like, you don't have to worry about it. So, I think that's what I've been doing most. I've been doing a bit more stainless steel this year.
Okay.
So kind of dialing that process in a bit more, and so just keeping busy.
Okay, very good. Okay, so you're seeing all road bikes. What do you think what are other builders talking about? What are they, other builders that you've spoken to at the show? Have they spoken to you at all about trends that they're seeing or how the market is in general?
It's very mixed, right? Yeah, it's interesting talking to people like how busy they are, and I haven't really talked about the mix that people are building. I think there's some builders who are just kind of more known for one
Certain
style of bike than another.
Yeah.
Because even though I build pretty much anything, I guess I'm still probably more known for road bikes than other things. I'm not sure the answer on that one.
Okay. All right. But what's the market like? I mean, you obviously in the mainstream cycling market, the big brands, the big production brands like your Trek, Specialized, Giant, you're hearing stories of overstock for them, reduced demand, too much stock off of the back of COVID greediness, I'm going to call it. And you are legitimately seeing bikes now on sale when only 12 months ago they were more expensive than ever and you couldn't get them. What's it like in the custom world? Are you seeing like pretty steady business?
Yeah, so for me, my waiting list had been pretty steady for many years, and then during COVID, it went out another 6 months. And I think I kind of saw COVID come in and managed to manage it reasonably well. I overstocked on parts and took to my best guesses of what I might need, and that paid off. So I was able to keep delivering. It seems like everyone's still, because the high end custom bike thing, I think, is a little bit separate from the COVID bike
it's
boom.
insulated a bit. Yeah.
And whilst some people were hit financially by COVID, and so there's maybe a bit of reticence to do that, I think. So it's kind of that between the customer where a custom bike is a one-time thing that they're saving up for, and then the customer who it's not that big a deal.
Sure.
And so those higher end guys didn't really care. It seems like just carry on. Maybe some other people held back a little bit to wait to see make sure their finances were going to be fine and those things. But I mean, it seems really healthy. I mean, it's just amazing the number of new builders here.
Yeah,
that names I haven't heard of.
Yes,
and that's wonderful. And it takes me back. When I was talking to Jonathan at Frameworks, their first show, and it's like took me back to 11 years ago, my first nabs. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember what that feels like. It's like, oh my god, what are people going to think? Like, it's so yeah. Hopefully, everyone's getting a really good reception. I'm seeing such amazing work here.
Yeah, and there's definitely the foot traffic for it. So hopefully,
What did they reckon? Like 3,000 tickets sold yesterday or something?
I don't know. I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
That was, but it felt busy.
Yeah,
felt very, very busy. Very hot, very busy. But yeah, it has been a good show. All right, Rob. Any other thoughts that you want to?
I think that's what I've got for now.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. We'll wrap it up there. Well, thank you for the time. It's good to finally sit down and chat after so many emails back and forth. So yeah,
I appreciate it, Dave. I'm really glad you and James were able to make it here, and look forward to next year, I guess, at this point.
Next year, and in the meantime, check out Rob's writing. His bikes are amazing, but his writing's pretty impressive too. He's got some good insights. So yeah, find it on the site. He's got an ongoing column. I think we're almost due for the next piece when you
that's next
when
week.
you get some sleep.
Yeah,
we'll give you another week. So yeah, all right, Rob. Cheers.
Cool. Thanks, Dave.
All right. So, as always, Rob had plenty of interesting things to say, lots of good insight. Definitely have watched Rob's bikes at bike shows over the years. Still have yet to ride one. Would love to at some point, someday. I'm not sure if that would ever actually happen, but
legend of the scene, hey.
For sure.
Yeah,
no question whatsoever.
He runs a little unassuming booth in the show. Doesn't have much in the way of branding in his booth or big signs like some of the other makers. But he's really a draw card. He was one man show at the show, and it was very hard to get a second with him where he wasn't surrounded by people.
For sure. Yeah, he strikes me as a man who maybe has to drink a lot of coffee to maintain that level of energy all day.
Doesn't drink coffee.
What?
Yeah.
Well,
anyway,
as I
he's
sit
a healthy
here with
individual.
as I sit here with my bottle of Mexican Coca-Cola, because I don't drink coffee either. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Rob. As I mentioned, Rob does do a regular column with us at Escape Collective, so make sure you head over to the site and check that out. All right, well, this is a little bit of a different format for this week's episode of Geek Warning, so we're not going to go over what's on our minds this week, and we're not going to share a PSA. Ronan is still on paternity leave, so it'll still be a little bit until we have him back on the show, but next week we'll have more of a regular group show. It'll be me and Dave, and probably Zach. I think Ronan's off for just one more week or so. So make sure you come back for next week's show. In the meantime, if you liked what you heard today, please go ahead and give us a rating and review over at iTunes, because it does help quite a bit in terms of people finding our show. And if you're listening to the show and you're not yet an Escape Collective member, as I mentioned earlier, please consider doing so, because that is how we fund everything here at Escape Collective.
Yes. I would add that we want more people to know about us. So we are doing well, but we can always do better. And getting the word out is really important for us at this time. I mean, we've only been going for 7 months ish. So yeah, if you can, you like what we're doing, tell a friend. Tell
7.
someone.
It's been like 5, 6.
I can't
6
count.
maybe.
Yeah. But yeah,
Anyway.
it hasn't been long. So tell a friend, share some content, go to the website, check out all our galleries from Made. James and I have put a fair amount of work into them. I think we're fairly proud of them as well, James, maybe.
Proud enough.
Yeah. And I think they're pretty good. So check them out. If you like them, send them to someone that might also enjoy them.
Sounds good. Sage advice for sure. Now, Dave, I'm going to have to wrap this up, because I need to go put on my Escape Collective sandwich board and go stand out on the street corner, because I'm trying to get the word out.
Thanks, James. Yeah.
You get just trying to do my part over here.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening. We will see you next week.
Cheers.